Welcome back to part 2 of developing your own trading strategies. Last time we talked about why the competitive nature of markets necessitates that you constantly search for new edge. We also talked about how to effectively conduct research to find those edges. Today we're going to talk about the coding and development part of the process. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, nothing in trading is easy, right? Luckily for you, I am an experienced software engineer with 11 years worth of development experience, and I have developed hundreds of trading strategies. I have also helped many traders through this channel develop their own strategies. So I know where a lot of the common pitfalls are, and I know what you need to focus on to be more effective. So let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Speculator Seth, and remember that this is part 2 of a 4-part series. So if you haven't seen part 1, you don't necessarily need to see part 1 to understand what we're talking about today, but I would highly encourage you to go back and watch part 1 later. Future installments will be about testing, which will probably be the largest video, and the maintenance process. So make sure you click that subscribe button and click the bell icon. That way you'll be sure you don't miss future installments. Now, I understand that the development process can be very daunting. Luckily for you, you don't have to go through it on your own. Yes, you don't want to share your strategy with the whole world, but developing strategies in small groups can make a world of difference. Collaboration is why this channel exists. That's why I go through all of the effort of making these videos and developing a community. And there are plenty of people for you to collaborate with, both during the YouTube live stream every morning at 8:20 Eastern time and in our Discord server. The Discord server in particular is a really great resource. We've been around, I think, 4 years now. We're linked to in a lot of the popular trading subreddits out there, so it's really quite well known at this point. There are tons of resources in there. Check out that education channel. Man, if you haven't checked out the Discord, you're really missing out. But yes, there are a lot of like-minded individuals there for you to interact with. We have things split up there by what kind of product you're trading, and then we also have a channel for algorithm development. And I just want to take a moment to thank everybody that's already a part of this community. I know that I wouldn't be the trader that I am today without this channel and this community. And it can even be the most trivial things like clicking that like button. If you haven't clicked the like button, please do so, because it helps the channel so much. That helps us build the community, and that means that we have more resources, more people to collaborate with, and that helps everybody become better traders. Now, as you are interacting with the online trading community, don't be afraid to reach out and contact people that you seem to jive with, okay? The best traders that I've met have always been really open to talking to people. Part of that, I'm sure, is that because everything happens online now, you don't get a lot of day-to-day interaction with other traders, and so everybody finds that kind of valuable. But I also think a really big part of it is that if you're a really good trader, you're going to realize that as much as you know, what you know is only a teeny little fraction of the overall knowledge available in the market, and so there is always an advantage in collaborating. And by the way, this applies to me too. You can always message me on Discord. You don't have to be friends with me first or anything like that. Just send me a message. Yes, I get lots of messages, but that's kind of my thing. That's part of where my edge comes from, is that I'm able to collaborate with so many different people, get so much information, and try so many different strategies. And that's where a lot of my edge comes from. I'm sure that it's not always going to be like that, but right now I am able to give traders individual attention, and you should definitely take advantage of that resource. Now, if that still seems daunting, just realize that coding and development is a skill that takes time to develop. I wasn't lying when I say I've developed hundreds of strategies, and yeah, most of them didn't work. At the heart of developing strategies is problem solving, and to get good at problem solving, you have to practice. So keep developing strategies, even if what you have to work with at the time seems trivial or stupid. It's those dumb strategies that you make at the beginning of your journey that you're going to learn the most from. And if you are just starting out, realize that I have a lot of other videos about coding on this channel, especially for NinjaTrader 8. So I go through the major functions that you need to know and concepts. I also go through a couple of basic strategies and analyze them. And from there, you should be able to look at strategies that already exist and be able to modify them to suit your purposes. And before you know it, you will be developing your own strategies and indicators from scratch. Now, as you're coding, there's a couple of things that I would really keep in mind that are going to help you get better at this faster. And the biggest one is always use abstraction and variables. Now, by abstraction, I mean splitting up a process into the main component parts and describing them generally so that you don't have to always deal with all of the fine details of something. So for instance, if I'm developing a strategy and part of that strategy is to manage risk, I'm going to take that code and split it out into its own method. And that way, when I'm looking at the main code block, I don't have to deal with all of the issues of managing risk. I can just call the function manage risk. And then if I do care about the details of that, I can go and look at that function. If there's anything that I see new developers struggle with, it is this. I can't tell you how many times I've downloaded NinjaTrader code only to find everything for that strategy stuffed into the on-bar update in this huge 500-line piece of code that is impossible to understand. When you start splitting that code up into different functions, not only is it going to be easier to understand, but it's also easier to test, and it's easier to apply advanced concepts like machine learning to them. You can basically take different parts of your strategy and mix and match them at that part and let the algorithms figure out what is the most efficient way of doing things. The same thing goes for variables. Anytime that you use a number in there, you should probably be setting it into a variable. And yeah, I'm really lazy about this too, but I found that if you just do that work at the beginning and split things out into variables, that it really makes your life better in the long run. So guys, don't be lazy, code it right the first time. Now, there are also some pitfalls very specific to developing and backtesting in trading that I would really pay attention to as you're coding. So it's so difficult to find an edge in the market that you're actually more likely to unknowingly cheat the backtester than you are to find an actual alpha generating signal. So you should always be really conscious about what you're doing to avoid falling into that trap and wasting time. The most common mistake of this type that I see people make is trying to build a strategy on Renko bars. So Renko bars are really popular amongst NinjaTrader 8 traders, but you have to realize that a Renko bar changes historical bars based on the close of this bar. So it's basically changing the past, and that is going to screw up your trading and make it an unreliable backtest. I've also seen people make this mistake with regression lines. So they will go and they'll take a regression line, the most recent regression line, and then they'll look back an hour ago and they'll say, oh, hey, here it bounced right off that regression line. And if I had took the trade there, it would have been a great trade. Yeah, but an hour ago, the regression line was different. So if you let your strategy use the current regression line on a bar from an hour ago, basically what you're doing is you're letting your strategy see the future. And yeah, that's not going to behave correctly when you try and use it live. Now, the key to avoiding these kinds of issues is just to understand what you are using, which I know sounds really daunting, but NinjaTrader has a lot of documentation, right? They have documentation about every method and every indicator that you're using, and you can also look at the code. So don't just naively use an indicator that you don't know anything about. Make sure you understand what it's actually doing first and read the documentation, because hey, oftentimes the documentation warns you about these kinds of problems. Another pitfall that you should be aware of specific to trading is in creating too many objects. So anytime that you use a variable that is not just a string or a number, you are possibly creating an object in memory, and creating objects can often be actually expensive processes. So a normal developer doesn't really think about this because it's still so fast that it doesn't matter. But when you start doing backtesting and that operation is run on every bar and every iteration of your strategy, it really adds up. So you should be really careful about using third-party libraries and objects when you don't need to. And you should be conscious about when you're creating objects. So don't create an object in the onBarChanged method where it's going to get called every iteration. Create the object once when the strategy is instantiated, and then just reuse that object over and over again. Thinking about those things from the beginning is going to make your life so much easier when you get to the testing phase, which, by the way, is going to be the next video. So again, make sure that you are subscribed and click the bell icon so that you don't miss that. Now, another key part of the development process is just being able to take a concept that you've learned from your research and being able to turn it into a strategy. This is where, again, a lot of it comes down to experience. And so I would encourage you to experiment and try a lot of different things. One of the things that I like to do a lot is I will always just start with the most naive way of using a concept that I can possibly think of. And then I'll think of the worst way of using that strategy, or do the opposite of the naive approach to see how that performs. And if the naive approach kind of performs okay, and the opposite of that performs like terribly, then I know that maybe this isn't random, maybe there's actually something to it. But really, the thing that's going to set you apart is your willingness to try zany things, okay? It has always been some of the most bizarre, counterintuitive things that ended up being the most significant in some of my strategies. Remember, finding edge in a competitive market is more likely to come from places where nobody is looking. So don't be afraid to try things that are just silly. Anyways, I think that should be more than enough to get you started, and I'm sure that people will have plenty of recommendations in the comments. I will see you guys when I'm streaming again every morning, 8:20 Eastern Time here on YouTube. In the meantime, stay profitable, friends.